I understand the people who switch to Kobo because they don't want to support Amazon because they're against Amazon.
That's fine.
I totally get that. If you're on the side of, I want to own my ebooks, there is no place you can buy an ebook to where you own that ebook. It does not exist. All right, welcome back to another episode of David and Gabby's Book Club. I'm David. This is my beautiful wife, Gabby.
Hey, everyone.
And this is a podcast where we just hang out, chill, talking about the books that we're reading, but we also talk about just book-related topics, and that's kind of what we're talking about today. If you want to, Gabby, if you want to tell them what we're chatting about.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of ebooks, audiobooks, and physical books. Just our overall thoughts about all of them and if we think one is better than the rest.
Yeah, and how we kind of use all of them in our lives.
Yep.
So we will be talking about just like right now, the whole Amazon thing is kind of blown up again in terms of how they changed how you interact with ebooks. You've probably seen it. If you follow BookTube a lot, you've probably seen a lot of it. We'll be talking a little bit about that because I think there is just, one, I have a different perspective opinion on it, but two, I do think a lot of people just misunderstand a small portion of it. So I kind of want to dive into that.
Yeah, expound on that a
little bit, which I'll be doing towards the cons of ebooks, because obviously it's a con that we'll be talking about.
So without further ado, let's get into e-readers. What are some of your overall impressions of e-readers, overall thoughts?
Overall, I love e-readers. So I know a lot of people just hate e-readers just in general. And they're just like, you need a physical copy of a book. And I agree to some sense. Like, we'll get to that when we talk about physical books. There's a lot of benefits to that. But in terms of like us reading more and having things more accessible and all of that, ebooks, they're great. I love them. It just makes books, it's always in my pocket on the phone, and the e-readers, you can grab them and take them anywhere, and you have multiple books with you, and not having to carry around everything is also a plus. And just the accessibility of reading is just so much better with e-readers. I don't think I would read nearly as much as we've been reading the past year and a half or 2 years than we would without e-readers.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say my overall thoughts with e-readers, also like on the love them, here for them. And a big reason is because I think that they help me read more.
Yeah.
They just make it a lot easier to do. So yeah, it's hard to give overall thoughts in one category or the other without giving your reasonings for the pros and cons, right?
Yeah. I mean, I just listed a lot of pros.
I know. So I was going to say, like, one of my top pro is how portable how easily portable an e-reader is. So we recently just took a big road trip, like a whole week in a car with the kids, with my in-laws. It was a great time. But when I was thinking about what I wanted to pack for myself in terms of books, the only thing that I packed was my e-reader. I didn't bother about a bunch of different physical copies of books. And I also I made sure that I had an idea of, if I finished the current book that I was on, what I was going to go to next, making sure that I had that on there, but also not having to worry a whole lot about having access to more than just what I was reading right now.
Yeah, because you had like a whole library on there.
Because I have a whole library on there. Yep. In the past, a disproportionate, like an unreasonable, that's the word I should use, an unreasonable amount of my luggage, my whole life, has been dedicated to books because of I'm going on a trip, right? I'll have, in my mind, I always have more time to read than I actually have time to read. And so I anticipate finishing at least one book, maybe two. Yeah. Realistically, that's not what ends up happening. But in my mind, when I'm packing, that's what's going on. And so I have the book that I'm on, and then I usually pack at least 2 other books because I'm like, what if I'm not in the mood to read book B and I want to read book C? And then there's also this like thing in the back of my head of like, what if I finish 2 books? You know, like what if I'm just
you want options?
I need options. And of course, it never occurs to me like I could go out and like buy another book and like all of these other things. But no, yeah, just historically, an unreasonable amount of my luggage, weight wise and space wise, has been dedicated to physical copies of books. And so that's just a huge advantage that I see to an e-reader. And not just like an app on your phone, you know, but like actually having like an e-reader.
Yeah.
That is one of my main pros. Do you have another pro that you would like to expand on? Or any situations that you've noticed that you've really appreciated the portability of an e-reader?
I think, like you said, I carry it around almost everywhere.
Does it fit in your back pocket?
It does, actually, yeah.
Does it really?
It fits in my front pocket, actually.
Does
yeah,
it?
because I have male front pockets, not female front pockets.
Yeah, no, side note. Female front pockets, they are the worst. Like, I think
our 2-year-old son probably has as good of pockets as a lot of Gabby's
I stick my phone in my pocket in like sweatpants, and it falls out because the pocket is unreasonable. It's not a functional.
We have a friend who, she has a conspiracy theory to where like all these brands that make purses like give royalties to like these
clothing
companies to make smaller pockets, so that women need to buy more purses.
Honestly, I think it makes sense. Okay, anyway, side note, you can fit one in your front pocket.
Yep. So I carry it around with me everywhere. One, the phone is nice because sometimes when I'm not thinking about it, like when we're going out to eat with your parents or something, and I need to use the restroom. Anytime I'm in the restroom, I pull my phone out and I start reading whatever book.
I don't know if I like that.
I mean,
it happens.
It happens, and that honestly, I'm probably not the only one who's on their phone in the restroom, because like the reason that like people's phones, like majority of the world, the phones are gross. Like they have the worst germs, and they're actually like more dirty than like the average like toilet, is because people use them like while they're in the restroom and stuff. So wash your phones. Well, not wash them, but like wipe them down.
Sanitize them.
Yeah. So okay. I'm not the only.
That took a turn. I'm
not ashamed of it, because everyone does it. Everyone has their phone out and they're in the restroom. So
yeah, no,
it's easy to just pull out my book and read a couple pages while taking care of business. So, but the e-reader is a nice bonus to just reading on your phone, because one, it's not as cramped.
Yeah,
it's a little bit bigger. You can zoom in and stuff. Make the text. Well, I guess you can make the text bigger on your phone, but you can just fit more on that screen because it's a little bit bigger. It is easier on the eyes. Like you hear about it all the time that it's easier on the eyes, and you're just like, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Because we were actually thinking about getting iPads instead of e-readers at first, but yeah, getting an e-reader, it really is easier on the eyes. It's crazy,
and you don't have like an option to be distracted with anything else.
Yeah, that's the other thing I was going to say, is that there's no distractions other than buying more books.
Yeah.
But
which is sometimes a problem.
Yeah, you don't get a ton of, you can't just like exit out, open up YouTube or this, that, or the other, unless you have one of those like Android e-readers. Like Books makes them Boox. Unless you have one of those, like there's nothing you can do other than maybe read another book or buy more books.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like, e-readers just makes accessibility to new books light years easier. I grew up in a really small town, and there was a library that had a decent selection, and I think that there was one small little bookshop downtown that, I mean, it was small. It was really small, and so I didn't have a whole lot of opportunity to always get the books that I wanted to get when I wanted to get them. So just like I got my first e-reader. I was telling David about this. He didn't know this. I think I was in like middle school. So I think it was around like 2007. I got my first e-reader. I am like 95% sure it was like a Sony something or other. Yeah. And just having that and the access, like having access to digital books life-changing in a great way.
I was wondering, I was like, well, not upset, but I was like, oh, why didn't you tell me this before? Because when we were deciding what e-reader to buy, we were also deciding like which ecosystem to go into. And if she already had one, then I was like, then we would have gone into that ecosystem.
But I was also explaining to him this was 18 years ago.
Yeah, so the books she has then probably may or may not. But she had the Lord of the Rings, which we've already bought again in our ecosystem currently. So,
these things I just forgot. And honestly, I don't even remember my login.
Yeah,
I don't think I even have access to the email that I used at that time in my life. Like, no, this was long enough ago that
we just start over. Yeah. Which that can lead into the cons. That's like a con of it is that you lost your e-reader, you don't know your login, and we got into a whole new ecosystem now. And so all those books that you spent money on and you have, they're gone, and we kind of have to like start over and buy them again. So that's like I think that is one of the biggest cons. Is like if you switch ecosystems, you kind of lose all the books that you bought on the previous ecosystem.
And I was going to say, like, with that Sony e-reader, like that was revolutionary to me. Yeah. But then I got a smartphone and I had access to like Apple Books and to Kindle books, and I had those apps on my phone. And so that's just what I like naturally like switched to. And I'm going to be honest, like, I had no book organization in my life. And so I have like a lot of just random impulse purchases in like all of the things.
Yeah. Like, cause we had to start a new account or whatever, cause you can't like merge it. And you had a lot on your old account.
Yeah.
A lot of books.
But yeah, like with ecosystems too, just thinking through, like we've talked about, like maybe not getting the next iPhone because we have iPhones, and I have books on Apple Books. Yeah. And like you don't get an iPhone, you don't have
Apple
access.
Books.
You don't have Apple
There's
Books anymore.
There's probably ways to do it, but it like all classic Apple way is that if you use their stuff outside of their ecosystem, it just doesn't work well because they don't prioritize it. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they have like an Apple Books app for like Windows or Android and they just suck.
Oh, yeah.
Because, I mean, you can technically subscribe to Apple Music on Android or Windows, but it looks clunky, it feels old, and there's no hi-fi audio. You have to have Apple stuff to do that. So that's just their way of locking it in.
Talking about ecosystems, like it's really like and it's not something that I go into, historically have gone into with a lot of thought. Yeah. It's something that like I just kind of stumbled into and like found myself kind of trapped. Yeah.
That's kind of, we can transition into the whole Amazon thing. Full disclosure, we use Kindles, and there's a link down there with the e-reader we use the Kindle Paperwhite. That's kind of what we went with because
I really enjoy it.
Yeah, we love it.
It's a good device.
Yeah, it is a good device. And the big controversy right now, if you didn't know, is that before you could download. So they had a feature with Kindle where you can download your ebooks, and so that you can transfer them to a Kindle without Wi-Fi through a cable. And a lot of people use that as a downloading their books to back them up and to quote unquote own them and own and control their content so that they don't lose them. And at the end of February, they got rid of that. And a lot of people are upset and are like, you don't own your books with Amazon, you should go to Kobo, which that I think is where the misunderstanding happens, is kind of a misunderstanding about DRMs, which that's kind of what, to explain a DRM is basically you have the content, but the DRM essentially locks that content to you personally, your account, and whatever device that DRM is for. So that, and the purpose behind it is to prevent piracy, essentially, so that you can't make copies of it and distribute it to other people and sell it, essentially. That's the purpose of it, to keep people from pirating, and which is a good thing. You don't, like, pirating is bad. Like, you're cheating people out of money, and it's not a good thing. Like, whatever, pirating is bad. DRMs are everywhere. Like if you buy a digital copy of a video game, that has a DRM on it that locks it to your account and your device.
Associated with
whatever service that you bought it from. Yes. So if you bought it on PS5, you can't download it, or you can download it, but it's DRM locked. So like if you take that file off of the SSD or hard drive and give it to your friend who has a PS5 and they load it up, they can't load it up because it's locked behind that DRM. It prevents you from doing that. It prevents you from sharing it and all that. It has it in video games. They have it in music. So like on Spotify or Amazon or Spotify or Apple Music, you can download the tracks. So the tracks are downloaded to your phone or device or whatever you have it listening on, but you can't take those files off of the device and go send it and share it with your friends. Why? Because it has a DRM on it and it's protected so that you can't just like download and steal all that content, quit your subscription and go sell it. Like the original purpose behind DRMs is a good thing to prevent piracy and cheating people out of money and the artists and all of that. So, but companies have started to use that as like a competitive advantage in terms of locking you into their ecosystem. I mean, and everyone does it. So if you have a PS5 and you go to Xbox, you can't take your PS5 games with you to Xbox. That's ridiculous. You obviously have to start your game library over again. Same if you go to Switch or the PS or PC.
Yeah, which is interesting. It's like it's a concept that I didn't fully understand. I think my first like understanding of DRMs popped up with movies, actually, like digital copies of movies
as well. Yeah,
I didn't understand why David liked like physical copies of media, because I'm all about let's get rid of it if we can, have as small of a footprint of all of the stuff in our house as possible. And I think you were saying that you were in line at like, what is it, Video Stock or something? Yeah,
I was at line at Vintage Stock. Yeah, because I buy a lot of the movies at Vintage Stock used on sales and stuff. And someone in line, they had all of their library was with Redbox.
Yeah, well, somebody in line was asking a question along the same lines, like why get physical? I don't understand, like why physical?
Because if you buy the digital copy through Apple, those are DRM locked, so you can't download it. If you leave Apple, you have to buy all those movies again. You can't transfer them. There's other things like Movies Everywhere is great because that syncs everything, and they basically it's DRM'd with them, and they have all the platforms or whatever. But she had Redbox and she had all of her movies on Redbox. Well, Redbox went out of business, and instead of giving her money back, instead of transferring those DRMs to another platform of their choosing, she just lost all of her movies,
which is so sad.
Yeah. That's a lot. Like it sounded like she had a lot of movies and a lot of money into that. So that's a big downside to just digital content in general. This is a widespread,
like not just books.
This isn't just
books. Music. There's
DRMs everywhere. Yeah. And so the big fuss is that a lot of people are saying, well, you don't own your content with Amazon, which is technically true. And it's true with anywhere you buy digital copies of anything. They all have DRMs, and you don't own it. You are technically buying a license to use it. So if Apple, for example, all of a sudden loses the rights to have a certain, like a Spider-Man, for example, they have all the Spider-Mans. And if all of a sudden they lose their contract with like Sony or whatever, and Sony no longer allows Apple to have Spider-Man movies, all of the Spider-Man movies you bought on Apple, they're gone, because Apple legally cannot license them to you to watch anymore. And so you lose it because you technically didn't own the movie. You owned a license to watch the movie through Apple because of the DRM. Same with like any of that digital copy stuff. And the way people got around this was they downloaded it they had that feature where you can download and get it to an older Kindle device with no internet, with no Wi-Fi, but people downloaded it and then they would go in and rip the DRM off so that it's like a free file. Then they can use it anywhere. The problem with that is, one, I doubt the majority of people ever do that. The majority of people probably downloaded it to back it up or something, or downloaded it for the actual feature of loading it into their old Kindles. But 2, that's technically illegal. At least in the United States, it is not, technically speaking, legal to rip a DRM off of anything. Yeah. Even if you bought it, it's not legal. So if you do that, it's technically wrong.
Which it's frustrating because like you spend money for a product and like with physical products, you buy something and you own it.
Like
you
those
have
books,
it.
we have it, we own it.
And so the idea of purchasing a license to access something and like losing access to something that you spent your money on is frustrating.
It is really frustrating. And that's a downside of ebooks. Yeah. But
and not one that I even realized was a thing.
Yeah. But that's just like a downside you have to understand going into it, because the one thing that's like frustrating is, one, people calling it anti-consumer because now you can't download it and rip it to DRM. One, that was like the only reason it was there was for older Kindle devices. It wasn't there for you to download and rip the DRM off of it, because that's illegal. Yeah. So that's not the purpose it was there. It was there for older Kindle devices, and Amazon kind of phased that out. And because Amazon has their own DRM, which I'll get to later, they have their own file DRM. It's specific to Amazon. They were basically patching up a hole. So they had old devices, but because they had old devices, there was a loophole where people can illegally rip the DRMs off of their books. And so there's a loophole for people to rip it and pirate it and sell them everywhere. So naturally, because Amazon owns their DRM file and have it proprietary to Amazon, they patched up that hole. And they phased out those old Kindles, and now it's just the new Kindles. They have the new file system. They don't need that anymore. So they're patching up the hole to keep people from illegally pirating things. Does it make it lock you more into Amazon? Yes. Like, does it give Amazon an advantage? Yes. But the thing that bothers me about this is a lot of people are saying is like, you don't own your content with Amazon, so you should go to Kobo. Kobo is the same exact thing. Their books are DRM'd. They have a DRM on them. And if you download them and you rip the DRM off, which it's a lot easier to do that than with Amazon's.
Because they don't have their own DRM system.
Which I'll get into. But that's still illegal. That is still against the law in a lot of countries.
And it's not what Kobo, like, that's not what they went into business for you to be able to do.
And Kobo is not like, we're leaving that whole patch because so that people can rip it and do whatever with it. The reason they haven't patched it is because they don't own the DRM.
Okay, so here's the question. Like, if you download a book through Kobo and you have it on a device, like it's on your computer and it has the DRM still on it, so you can't distribute it, if Kobo goes out of business, would you still be able to access it?
So that's the thing with, there are reasons that one might want to choose Kobo over Amazon Kindle. Like, there are reasons, but the reason of like, I want to own my content, that's where I think there's a misunderstanding, because you don't own the content on Kobo either. Theirs is the same thing. It's DRM'd. You are buying a license to use it. So if Kobo loses, because the big thing was like 1984, a lot of people lost 1984. Well, the reason they lost it is because the person that was the company or whatever that was selling through Amazon, selling 1984 through Amazon, they didn't legally have the rights to sell that book.
Oh.
So what does Amazon have to do? They're illegally selling a book on your platform. What do? You don't sell it anymore.
Yeah.
Because you don't own 1984. It'd be like if you got a copy and put it on, like, you didn't have the rights to sell it. And so Amazon took it off because they didn't have the rights to sell it. The person selling it didn't have the rights to sell it.
Gotcha.
And because of that, it took it off of everyone else's, because they didn't have, like, you obviously would take that off because it's illegal. It's illegal activity on your platform.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so, but Kobo is the same way. Like, if Kobo lost a light, Kobo uses Adobe DRM is what the DRM is. And so Amazon's DRM is an Amazon locked file, but Kobo's, they use it's called Adobe Digital Editions. So it's not Kobo's proprietary file. It costs a lot of money to do that. And so what do? There's a third party, Adobe, who creates that and basically gives people the option to license that DRM. And so Kobo pays Adobe to use their DRM in Kobo devices. So Kobo is DRM locked as well. You don't technically own those as well. It's the same thing. You're technically licensing it. And if Adobe loses the license or rights to have any of these, then it's gone on Kobo, just the same. But Kobo doesn't do it. It's Adobe because and I guarantee you the reason Amazon can patch up those DRMs and make it so it's very hard to rip it off is because they own their whole ecosystem. They own everything, and they own that because they're so big. And so that gives them the freedom and control to, I'm going to patch this up, create a new type of file for these DRMs to make it so that people don't rip it and illegally distribute these copies to protect the authors and their pockets, obviously. And they do that. Well, now all the e-readers are not compatible with this new file that they just made. Well, they own all the e-readers too. So just throw out a new update. They're all compatible. Boom, done. Bob's your uncle. Adobe, if they come in and patch it up and create a new file, well, guess what? All the people who are licensing Adobe Digital Editions for their things need a new update, and they need to throw out new compatibility. It's a mess. So Adobe doesn't have the as much flexibility to easily patch these things up. And I guarantee you, if Kobo had the money and resources to make their own DRM file, then.
So to summarize, your big stink with the whole issue coming up with Amazon is people ripping DRMs off.
Yeah. Well, if you leave Amazon because you think you don't own your content and you're going to Kobo because you own your content, that's not true. There are benefits to going to Kobo over Kindle. Right. One of them being that the Adobe Digital Editions is not exclusive to Kobo. So even though they're, I don't even know at that point. I actually don't know because because they're locked to your account as well. So you might, what I was going to say was if you have a Kobo, you have your whole library in Adobe Digital Editions, then you buy I don't know what else uses Adobe Digital Editions, but I'm going to just use Nook as an example. They might not. Nook is out of business anyways. And you buy a Nook, you should be able to take those files and put them into there because they're both compatible with Adobe Digital Editions. But I don't know if you can because they're technically locked to your account on Kobo.
Well, that's what I was going to say. An advantage that I see to Kobo is I understand the DRM, the logic behind it. So you can't pirate whatever you buy. You can't illegally distribute this, illegally send it to your friends so they don't have to buy it. It protects whoever created that. It protects the company who sells it, or else they don't have a means to make money to continue doing what they're doing. If you're in a legitimate, if you're in a business, you need a way to make money. That makes sense. But an advantage that I think I see to Kobo over Amazon is just the ability to be able to download it to a device. And this is maybe I don't understand it completely, but if do you download Lord of the Rings to your PC and Kobo goes out of business, you should still have the thing that you downloaded on your PC. You shouldn't be you won't be able to move it to anywhere other than your PC.
Yeah.
But you would technically still have a copy of it. Technically,
yeah. And that's where a lot of the stink is with the downloading for Amazon. But at the same time, if that's the case and Kobo goes out of business, then you can't read it on your PC either.
You wouldn't be able to pull it up on your PC, if you had downloaded.
If it's DRM locked to Kobo, then you would need to read it through a Kobo app.
Oh.
You can't just because it's DRM locked. You can't just open it with anything. You have to open it with if you download those Amazon books, you technically can't open those without a Kindle app or a Kindle device or a Kindle approved device.
Okay, so but
unless you illegally rip the DRM
What if
off.
you had it loaded onto your Kobo device?
then you can read it on your Kobo device.
You
Yes.
can, as long as it's downloaded on your Kobo device.
Yep.
Without internet, you'd be able to still access it. So that's the advantage.
But that's the same with Kindle.
Yeah, that's true, because I've had Libby. Libby's like a digital borrowing, like through the library, and you can download it to your Kindle device to read.
Yeah.
Like, I stumbled upon this knowledge. I did not realize it, but I had a book that my time borrowing it came up, and so like it returned it.
Yeah.
But I pulled up my Kindle and it was still there, and it was because I had turned off the internet access or something. I don't know.
Or you didn't have internet access at the time. Yeah.
Or I didn't have internet access at the time, and so like because it didn't have internet access, it just like reverted, and it
didn't know that you didn't have a license to use it anymore.
Right. But as soon as I turned on
it communicates, and Amazon says like, hey, you don't have permission to read that. They don't have the permission to read that anymore. That's another good thing about, like, a positive of DRMs. That's the only way you can allow someone to rent something from the library when it's digital, is with a DRM. Because you have a license to read it for a certain amount of time, and then when that license runs out, your DRM's over and you can't open it anymore. Otherwise, if there wasn't a DRM, there would be no way for them to like hold you accountable to that, because you would have the file and you can just keep it and steal it from the library essentially. So that all of these things, it's like, I understand the people who switch to Kobo because they don't want to support Amazon and because they're against Amazon.
That's fine.
I totally get that. Like, I'm fine with using Amazon because it's very convenient and all this other stuff. And we're not going to talk about all of that in this episode, but I'm totally fine with you going to Kobo because you don't want to support Amazon. Got it. If you are on the side of, I want to own my ebooks, there is no place you can buy an ebook to where you own that ebook. It does not exist.
Yeah, there are loopholes that you can have.
There are loopholes you can have to rip the DRM off to own it, but those are illegal. At least in the United States, they are not legal. And so,
or like if you have all of these copies downloaded to your device and you shut off internet access.
Yeah, you can technically have access to all those stuff, but you still legally don't own that content. If your stick is, I want to be able to buy a DRM, because what you want to look for to own a book is a DRM free copy. And
then you can move it to whatever device you have.
Yeah, you can read them anywhere. Like, you can read them on your Kindle. Like, Kindle supports DRM free files.
A PDF to any.
Yeah, I looked, and most, if not all, publishers protect their content with DRMs. So if you find a DRM free copy of stuff, well, one, you can't find it in legitimate stores. So if you go to Google Play, if you go to Kobo, if you go to bookshop.org started selling ebooks, which they have their own DRM, so that locks you into their system and you don't own it as well. Any of those legitimate sites, and you find a one that is DRM free, then that's truly DRM free, and it's either like self-published or the publisher is allowed it to be DRM free. Those are legitimate. But any other copies, like if you look for Red Rising and you find a DRM free copy and it's not sold through Google or Kindle or Kobo, it's probably an illegal copy.
Yeah,
because it doesn't exist. Because I think like Del Rey, or at least Del Rey did like the later ones, or Penguin Random House, I don't remember who published it. They put a DRM on that. It's from the publisher. So if you really have a shtick about DRMs on books, that should be aimed at the publishers, because they're the ones who are saying
which it's just like a whole new world with like digital stuff, because these are things that I didn't even realize until you started going on these rants.
Yeah.
We didn't actually,
when we were wanting to do ebooks, I was talking about which kind of ecosystem, because once you commit to that ecosystem and you start buying books and building a library, you can't take that library anywhere. That's a big downside to ebooks. And so we were between like Kobo and Amazon and Apple Books is the three of them, and we ended up with Amazon because you already had some books from college, and just the whole ecosystem is just nice, and they're syncing with our Audible and all of that. But audiobooks is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Which if we want to switch, transition to that with DRMs. There is a way.
Oh wait, I had more cons to
sorry.
e-readers.
Cons to e-readers. Then we'll go into audiobooks. Sorry.
Yeah, so like overall, all of that to say, I really enjoy e-readers. I think that they help me read more. But I have found here recently, especially, I'm reading a couple of like nonfiction books that I have points that I want to reference. Historically, the way that my mind works, I just remember kind of the point in the physical copy of a book, and I like flip to that page and I can remember in my mind's eye where whatever I wanted to reference was at. Like it just like my mind, those things are sticky in my mind. Mm-hmm. And so historically, that's just how I reference different things in books. I usually don't underline. I usually don't take notes. Mm-hmm. Like it's just something that my mind remembers, but that's not the same on an e-reader. And so there have been multiple things that I've wanted to reference, and I can even think in my mind, okay, that was like in the first, one of the first 2 chapters about midway through. And it's so hard on an e-reader to like, I can't just like thumb through and flip through and like find the thing that I want. Yeah. And so it just, that's the way that I've trained myself to reference different things. And so I found that I can highlight on an e-reader and I can reference it that way. But if I don't think to myself that I'm going to want to reference this specific thing, it's just so hard to find again. It's like
I agree. Going back and like flipping through is just, there's something about having a physical copy and being able to no. Like it's so much faster and easier, and you kind of know where you're at. You can't. It's hard to do that with a digital.
Yeah, so that's definitely a con that I've noticed, especially in the last few weeks, because there have been a couple of points that I'm talking to other people about these books, and I'm like, oh yeah, and then this point, and like here, let me pull up the actual facts, and I'm like, actually, I cannot pull up the actual facts for you because this will take too long. So that's a little bit of frustration. The other thing was just the ecosystem.
That's just the biggest downside.
Being tied to an ecosystem, So it's not that we can't change ecosystems and
like keep
what we have on an old ecosystem, but there's always like an element of risk with digital copies that whoever you have your content through will either lose their license to whatever you bought, or that they'll go out of business. Which is what happened with Redbox. So,
which a lot of companies, like if they're good and proactive, like some of them
it likely
have happened
won't
in the past. Well, some of them in the past, like some movie stuff, Redbox, either that
lady didn't
understand it or missed the window. A lot of them, like when they're going out of business, they'll be like, "Hey, we're going out of business. We partnered with X, Y, or Z. All of your content, you can keep it, but you have to connect your accounts to this company so that your stuff can transfer over." Right. So like, let's say like if Amazon somehow goes out of business, which very well could happen, but small likelihood of that.
Yeah, could, but not likely.
Yeah. They could essentially partner with Kobo and be like, hey, we're going out of business. You have until March 31st to connect your Kobo account to your Kindle, and all of your titles will be transferred over there so that you can keep them. And a lot of companies do that when they're going out of business. And so you can still keep them with another ecosystem. I don't know if Redbox did that. I wouldn't be surprised if like Redbox did that and you had like a month or so to do that, and she just didn't. She didn't see it,
didn't understand it,
or Redbox are just goof heads and didn't think of that and were irresponsible. Both are likely. I don't know.
Yeah.
Both are possible.
Yeah, but that's just also a con that like when you, and I've thought about that with all things that I have through Apple specifically. Like that's another big ecosystem that like people talk about. Once you're in, like you can leave, but like you're going to lose what you had. And it's such a different mindset. Yeah. Because I grew up with, you buy something physical, you have it until you get rid of it or you lose it.
Literally the only way you can own your content in terms of books is buying physical books, which is a big bonus of buying physical books.
Yeah. Oh, and another big bonus of e-readers is that it doesn't take up they're not hard to store.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like, I love books, and honestly, like a lot of books, like just thinking about the like element of risk with an e-reader, like losing access to the license that you've bought with physical books.
You have to keep track of them.
I have to keep track of them, and I have to store them. Personally, I only keep the ones that I love. And like, to go along with that, you've made a point of the books that you love that we might start out reading on an e-reader. You're like, I'm getting a physical copy of this.
Yeah, because those are the ones I want and I want to have and keep. The other downside, or the other positive, would be that with physical books, you could lose it. So like if you just lose a book, or it gets destroyed, or maybe it gets way too old and it starts fraying, or maybe like there's water damage in your house, it's gone. If you take our Kindles and you smash it with a hammer, guess what? I can go buy another Kindle, connect it to my account. All my books are right there. Granted,
you remember your account.
Well, not only that, but granted, now you're depending on Amazon to keep your books for you on their servers, but the same goes with Kobo
there's an element of risk with all of it.
There's an element of risk with all of it.
With anything.
Because you don't own it, you don't store it, you're not keeping track of it. But at the same time,
there's an element of risk with whatever you keep and you store.
Yeah, you're responsible for keeping those physical copies. And if you lose it and it wears out, the digital copy is not worn out.
Or if you lend it to somebody and that person is irresponsible and doesn't ever give it back to you.
Yeah, you can't lend out a digital copy though. That's another downside.
That's a downside.
That's a big downside because even like
my sister was like, "Are you gonna buy this book?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm definitely gonna buy this book." She's like, "Oh, can I use it after you use it?"
And we were like,
"Of course." And then she's like, "Wait,
we can't.
Are you getting the e-reader?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like,
we can't do it.
Yeah, so
that's a big downside.
That's
that's
like
just
not being
a
able
really
to
big fun side of physical books. But but we'll talk more about those in the physical book section. In terms of owning digital copies, the only way I know of that you can own a digital copy of a book is through audiobooks, and that is a big positive of that is, or kind of switching.
There are not DRMs on audiobooks?
Well, there are. But if you get them through Libro.fm, all of their books are, that's the big thing that they promote, is they're all DRM free.
Oh,
so
I didn't know that.
And we'll have that linked in the description, because that's
huge.
We still get stuff from Audible because it really links up, and Audible Audible's desperate for people. Like whenever you quit Audible, like randomly Gabby will be like, "Hey," or Gabby will get a thing is like, "Hey, you want to join Audible again for 99 cents for the first 3 months?" And Gabby's like,
"Yeah,
sure. $1 an audiobook, sure." But we try to get a lot of our audiobooks through Libro.fm because Libro.fm has DRM free audiobooks, which it doesn't exist for ebooks. Like you can try and find it. If you do, it's probably illegal. Like 99% chance that place is illegal if they sell all DRM free.
And if you find it and it's not illegal, let us know.
Yeah. If you find it, let us know. But the DRMs are through the publishers. If you find them that a place that sells all their books DRM free, then it's probably legal. But audiobooks, it's apparently not. And because I looked at and researched it, and I was like, oh no, this is totally legit. And so we like to buy our audiobooks through Libro.fm because they allow you to download them DRM free. And now I have a Plex server, and so we download them DRM free, and now I can listen to the audiobooks through Plex and do it that way. And I have the not security, but the peace of mind knowing that I own these audiobooks. So if Libro.fm goes out of business, or if they lose a license to it or whatever, I still have the files and I own them. So that's what I enjoy about audiobooks is it even has that option.
Yeah, I'd say overall, like my overall impression of audiobooks, moving on to this section, is I overall like it, but I'd say out of the 3 options, probably my least favorite. Yeah,
I would agree. Audiobooks make it a lot more convenient to read, to get through a lot of books. But yeah, I agree. I would rather sit down and physically read it, either on an e-reader or in a physical book, because it's just so much more immersive. And a lot of times when I'm listening to audiobooks,
my mind wanders.
You zone in and out, but you're also doing stuff a lot of times.
Yeah.
So I'll listen to it while I'm driving, or I'll listen to it while I'm doing dishes, or I'll listen to it while I'm mowing the lawn. So something else is happening.
I like to listen to it while I crochet.
Or when you crochet.
Yeah. I found that I like it for the convenience. I never retain quite as much as if I would read it. And I like that my hands can be busy. Sometimes, and this might be like a flaw in myself, but I don't like not being productive.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes just like sitting down and reading a book is hard for me because I have so many other things that I just want to be doing. And so, yeah, sometimes it's really nice to be, and it's especially if like I'm listening to something that I've already read.
Yep.
That's kind of nice.
It's a lot easier for me to do audiobooks of books that I've already read.
Yeah. And I've heard, like you told me, somebody had mentioned if you read and listen to a book at the same time, your retention goes up because you're utilizing different parts of your brain, which makes sense. I've never tried it, but that makes sense to me. I think it would maybe drive me insane if I read at a different speed than whoever is.
Yeah, well, you'd have to speed up the audiobook.
Yeah, but then it's like, are they going to? Yeah, I've not tried it, but if like the speeds line up, that I think
would be interesting.
Yeah.
The thing that I've tried it a little bit. The thing is that if you zone out at all, the audiobook's still going and you're here.
Oh,
if that makes sense. So that's the
I guess
thing
that kind of calls out like how much you zone out.
Yeah,
that would be but I mean I do it too. Like my mind just wanders. And that's like when you're reading a physical book, obviously your mind stops.
Yeah.
But the audiobook, I mean, even it keeps going. And so that's like back to that road trip. You were driving and the kids were out and we were listening to the audiobook. And if my hands are not busy when I'm listening to an audiobook, I just like get antsy.
Yeah. I mean, my hands were busy, obviously, because I was driving.
Yeah. And so I was just sitting there like, my mind wandered so much. I like missed
really?
Yes, I missed huge chunks and like had to go back. Yes, I should have, but it was dark outside.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I was thinking about it. Like maybe that would have been a good time to like try the whole reading and listening at the same time. Just
that would have been good. And you would have been caught up because it wasn't syncing with your Kindle, and you had to find.
I didn't like that. I think that those are my two pros. It's just like it makes it easier to read. I still think I consider it reading. I just don't think I consider it as high a quality of reading.
Yeah, it's harder to.
It makes it more convenient, and I think like overall, I like reading, and I see a lot of benefits to reading, and the easier it is to access your books, the better in my mind. Just having a knowledge of how badly do I need to retain this information, and like, is this the best option for that retention need?
I agree. Out of all of the ones, that's the weakest link in my opinion. And I almost try to avoid it if at all possible, because I'm more engaged, I'm more immersed, I retain more. Yeah. Reading it from my e-reader or a book. And so
I think it just depends on the scenario.
Yeah. But also with the audiobook, especially with self-help books, because those audiobooks are usually like 10 hours or less, when fantasy books are usually like 20 hours or more. I'm fine with, because you can go through them faster. And so you can like, one, you can listen to it multiple times, but two, it's like you can get all that just because self-help books, you're not retaining and getting all of it anyways. You get like nuggets here and there, even when you read it physically. And so for audiobooks, like you're getting nuggets, and you can get, and those, if you really want to get all of it or most out of self-help stuff, you should be reading them multiple times anyways, because you get different nuggets stick out each time. So for like a fantasy novel or a story, you kind of need to be following along the entire time to understand the story. So
yeah, you can zone out on a piece of a self-help book and like you're still good benefit. And then you can go back and listen to it again pretty easily. I see what you're saying. Okay, so any other thoughts on audiobooks? Any other cons?
I don't think so.
So physical copies, overall thoughts on that?
They're my highest preferred way to read, but my least actually way to read, if that makes sense. I would prefer to sit down, relax, have a physical book in my hand, and just read for hours. But in our stage of life right now, the amount of time that happens, hardly ever. Like I had to intentionally, like when we were reading through Harry Potter, we have all the Harry Potter books there. I had to intentionally be like, no, I don't want to read this on my e-reader or my audiobook because I want to read the physical book because we have it and I love reading physical books. So it was, it's just so like the e-readers just make it so much more convenient because if you have 5 minutes, it's easy to just like grab it, turn it on, read it for 5 minutes. You have to kind of just set aside time more to read physical books, which I guess that's straight into a con. But I just love,
which I mean, it could be a pro. Like
I love getting the time and having the tangible, like flipping through the pages, holding like a thicker, like having the feel of it in your hands. It's just, I don't know. I feel like it's just like a prideful thing, but I just feel like this is reading. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've even thought about it. Our kids are really young and they pick up on a lot of what they are picking up on right now is what they see us doing. And so they see us looking at
a device
and it's like, do they understand that we're reading?
Yeah.
You know, and it's like
And
if we read like a book, like a physical book, that's just a lot more concrete in their mind. Which I think overall physical books, they're probably tied with e-readers in my mind, if I'm going to be honest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they are my highest in the right scenario. Like you were saying, like if I had perfect scenario, they would be my favorite. Like if I had a ton of time to just sit down, if I had a ton of space or like a library system where I never had to wait. And there is just something special about like holding a book and like even the smell of it. I know that's kind of weird. Like,
oh, I love smell. Who doesn't love the smell of books?
Yeah.
Old books or new books. They both smell great, have different great smells.
Sometimes they smell weird.
Yeah, but those are weird books you should avoid anyways.
Yeah, and like the textileness of it, I think it is definitely highest retention.
Yeah,
which is strange to me, but like I retain whatever I'm reading the best when I read a physical book, and I think that is like the textile referencing thing that I was just talking about before. Even with like a fiction book, I can go back and like look at a specific scene. Like if I like tie a point, like, oh, this is like, I think that like this happened previously. Like I can go back and like read. And I was like, yes, it did happen previously. Like now it all ties together. I see the whole plot.
Well, and it's also like more immersive in the sense that like there's a reason that books, like authors choose certain like formats of it and certain like looks of the pages, certain feels of the pages, certain thickness, certain fonts of their illustrations, but all of that is intentional to like make you into the feeling that they're trying to evoke into the world. And so, but e-readers, the font is the same no matter what book.
Yeah.
And it's all the same. So it is more immersive. Even those tiny little things is just a little bit more immersive into that world, in my opinion, for the physical books. But well, and like another thing to point out is that like when we went on our anniversary trip, was it last year's that we did it or 2 years ago? Last year. It was last year when we like went to like the getaway cabin, which I think they're now like postcard cabins or something like that. But
cabin in the woods.
A cabin in the woods.
It's small.
Just hang out for a few days. We both brought physical books.
Oh, that's true.
Because like there weren't kids, we just had time to just chill and read. And we both like wanted to intentionally grab the physical copy of them from the library so that we can bring the physical copy with us, not just have the digital.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And we both read from the physical copies.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying, like in an ideal situation.
Yeah, and that was the ideal situation.
Yeah, in an ideal world, I'd say physical are definitely my favorite. But like just from the standpoint of I want to read, I want that to be the content that I consume. I think that the ease of access that e-readers and audiobooks gives me, I can't.
The problem is like if we only did physical books, I don't think we would read like
half as much.
I would almost say like a third almost as many books as we do.
Yeah, because like that, it wouldn't always be on us. We wouldn't be able to do it while we're doing other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
the positive is like you own the content in terms of like you shouldn't be copying it. that's still illegal, but like we own all those Harry Potter books. Downside is a lot of those Harry Potter books are falling apart. So which the digital copies would not fall apart.
yeah, that's fair.
They're falling apart. You got to keep track of them.
You can't read them in the dark.
Store them. You can't read them in the dark unless you have a nightlight.
And that's not the dark. That's light.
That's intrusive. Yeah. So that's another positive is with the ebooks. It's like they have.
That's huge.
Massive.
I remember like car rides when I was growing up. I didn't have like a little reader light.
Yeah.
Because my parents were like, the lights in the car in the back are illegal. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, once the sun went down, I couldn't read.
Yeah. So.
And maybe that's why I didn't get through like the 5 books that I packed in my luggage.
That's it.
That's it.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think like overall, I don't have a beef with any of the like e-reader, audiobook, physical. Like I'd say they all promote reading, and I'm here for that. Yeah. I think that out of the 3, audiobooks are just my least favorite. Physical would be my idealized favorite and definitely the easiest to retain, but e-readers are probably the ones that I use the most because of practicality purposes.
Yeah, they're all great, and they help. Honestly, they just help. All of them help us read more, which I think is the point.
Yep.
So reading. Well, I guess it's not always the goal just to read more, but like fitting reading into our life more, I think is just massive. Whether that's getting through more books or not, like we are reading more.
Right. That's the like if out of all of the entertainment options that are available to us these days, I think that reading is the one that I would prefer to have consume my attention.
Yeah.
And so I was just saying like there are a lot of other things that I could be listening to. Yeah. Like when I do the dishes, but I would prefer to listen to a book than, I mean, not the
book
podcast.
Or podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. But like, yeah, I see a lot of value in books. Yeah. So I guess that is my final stance. Yeah. My final thoughts on the topics. So,
but yeah, let us know in the comments what your preferred way to read books is, and if you're like, I know there's people who are like just totally against ebooks and e-readers or ebooks and audiobooks. So if you're one of those people, tell us why in the comments, and if you have kids or not. So I'm just kidding, but for real, like if we wouldn't be able to read as much if we didn't, or with kids if we didn't have the ebook and audiobooks. But yeah, let's talk about it in the comments.
Yeah. All right. So, thanks for hanging out with us, guys. We'll catch you in the next one.
See ya.